I think that this is probably a good segue for the Solar AquaGrid. So if you could explain what that is to the layman, because it's pretty interesting stuff.
It is. We were a few years ago. We were approached by an energy company to do and a potential project developer to do a study to really do a good economic and feasibility analysis of putting solar over canals in California. And California is about 4,000 miles of open canals, and we estimated that if we covered all of them, that would get us halfway to our 2030 goals for additional renewable energy in the state. So that land area, using already disturbed land, just makes a lot of sense for that. So that was one of the motivations for doing it, because we know it's going to cost more just to build it and install solar when you have to have a little bit of customization of the design, versus if, let's say, you, Rick, own a 100-acre field and you're not doing anything with it and you want to make some money off of it. Okay, you'll sign up with somebody to put solar on it. But on the other hand, that may be land that either is productive farmland, or it may be land with a high biodiversity value that should be maybe used, less intensively used.
So the plan is to cover all of the canals with, like, are you building like bridges that are across the canals, or just like metal? I don't know. Bridges are the first thing that come to mind, but what's kind of the engineering of how this is going to be set up?
Right now, we have a prototype project under design, and hope to start building on it this fall in partnership with an irrigation district in the Central Valley of California, Turlock Irrigation District, which is the oldest irrigation district in the state, and an electricity provider as well as a water provider, has a very, I think, forward-looking outlook on what they need to do to serve both their customers and do it in a sustainable way. So they offered to cover some of their canals as part of the demonstration and to work the bugs out of the design.
Yeah.
Because it's conceptual now. There have been some of these canals covered in India successfully, but it's a little different technology, and it doesn't work so much because we have different ways in the U.S. of building the canals, of doing maintenance on them, and we need some equipment access, I think, whereas some of the work in India maybe is done more by hand. And so our design has to be a little different for that purpose. So think of it as, let's say you're building a carport or something. You'll build, you put some posts up, and then you'll build some roof joists or supports across it, and then put the roof on it. Well, it's similar to covering a canal. If the canal isn't too wide, you can put a post on one side and cantilever the panels off over it.
Okay.
But if it gets too wide, then you have to put supports on both sides.
Okay. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now that's for canals that don't get too wide, and those are steel. But then when they get much wider, we use a cable suspension. Think like a cable bridge or something. So it's a lighter weight thing. But then you have to anchor them back a little ways from the canal to hold them in place.
Okay.
So it's different designs depending on how wide your canal is.
Okay. All right. And so this is obviously to harness the power of the sun, but isn't it also a dual purpose initiative? Isn't it also to stop evaporation, or am I making that up in my mind?
it should reduce evaporation. Yeah, and no, you didn't make that up. That's exactly, that's why, after we published that paper, we were getting calls from and emails from zillions of people saying, hey, that's an idea I had years ago to save water and produce more water and so forth. And we said, we all, great minds think alike along these things. So
I have kind of a goofy question. Now, I'm assuming, and now the more I think it out, the more goofy I think it is, but I would assume that there's going to be, especially in the summer, there's going to be potentially some heat rising. Is there a way to capture that energy that you guys have thought about?
Well, by not necessarily by putting the canals over the water, that has a little bit of a cooling effect.
Yeah, I figured,
and they're a little more. The panels can be a little more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
They get less efficient when they get hot.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So you're going to use, and that's kind of, I was like, I don't know. For some reason, I'm thinking that the solar panels are going to be like see-through or translucent is maybe a better word. And it was going to kind of heat up the water a little bit, and there'd be some more. And I was like, maybe we could, but I now that I think about it, the more I thought about it, I feel like solar panels are pretty much black for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's what you would be using.
Yeah. They'll be at an angle though, so there will be some sun, but the water evaporation is caused by both the solar radiation from the sun, but also by the wind. Because as water evaporates, the wind blows that evaporated water out, so the air becomes dry.
Yep.
And then more evaporates. So you need to have drier air above the water to evaporate, and the wind replenishes by blowing that humid air out and bringing dry air in. So it's both the wind and the sun that provides the advantage.
The old Chinook winds of Eastern and Central Oregon. I was like, I was like in third grade. I should have known that. Why, if it snows so much towards the east, why isn't a rainforest? Like, it's because of the wind. It sucks up all this. It's called a Chinook wind. I was like, oh shit, I should have known that. Good call, Roger.
Take you back to your youth.
Yeah, dude. I've forgotten so much of what I learned in school. It's not even funny. That is so. When is this project? And you may have said that, but I got excited. But when is it going to be implemented again? Is it in 2022, or is this going to be something that is going to be in 23?
Well, the design is in progress right now. Okay. So yeah, but they need to get more detailed drawings put together, and then they can put it out to bid for a contractor to build it. Mm-hmm. So if that goes smoothly, they should start construction in just a few months.
Oh, wow.
Now, there may be supply chain issues, so it may not be ready by December, but hopefully early in 23, at the latest, yeah.
That's awesome.
Got to make sure there's a contractor available that can do it for the amount of money we have available and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're going to be able to kind of study this and test how much power is this going to be able to produce? Like, is this going to be enough to power a small town? Or I'm kind of curious to, like, once this test project goes live, how much power are you guys hypothesizing you're going to generate?
Think of it more as a neighborhood or a small commercial area. It's going to be about, I think, maybe 5 to 7 megawatts of installed capacity. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't done the calculation as to how much it's going to produce, but we're also looking to couple storage with it so that the electricity can be put into the distribution lines when it's needed rather than when it's produced.
Yeah.
Because again,
I worked.
You want to make it useful.
Yes, I almost worked for a company. There was a startup. They built. Think of like shipping containers, like a 20-foot shipping container, and they were giant batteries. And what they would do is they would get charged up during the day through solar or wind, and then they would diffuse into the grid at night as needed, and then the process would repeat, so on and so forth. I don't know why I didn't take that job now, but that
Okay.
that's probably, I'm assuming that you would be connected to something like that. I don't even remember the name of that company.
Yeah. Well, the project developer is a startup company called Solar AquaGrid. They're our partner. So they have a solar engineer who's working with the designer, and they're looking at some right now conventional flow battery, I think, storage. But the nice thing is that Turlock Irrigation District has its electricity distribution lines right along the canal. So they can put the electricity into the canal wherever they want.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's pretty sweet, actually. Why do you know why they decided to go that way?
Well, that's just the way they developed, because they developed as an irrigation district, but they serve both water and electricity to the agricultural area, and then they just expanded to serve electricity to the communities too.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So, in your opinion, what are some of the hidden costs of this? And I'm not talking financial. Like, everything has a cost. So, what are you guys afraid of? Like, let's say this initiative takes off. Are you worried that this might inhibit migrating waterfowl that might be landing using these irrigation canals as breeding or food stops? Like, what do you think is going to be a cost to wide implementation of this that we might not, that you're hypothesize or thinking of?
Yeah, our hypothesis is that it will not be an issue for birds. And we have a research partner who works for the Audubon Society who's agreed to be a partner in this and evaluate it. And that's his hypothesis too. So it's not just me, it's somebody who knows what he's doing with birds. One of the concerns that we have for scaling is that can we come up with a standard design so that the engineering costs are manageable? Because if you have to re-engineer every canal and every section, that's going to be an extra cost there. So right now, if you have an open field and you want to build a solar, you take an off-the-shelf design and you buy an off-the-shelf system to put on there. There's project developers that have those available to roll out quickly. So we need to just get at what's the best design. Can we get by with 3 or 4 designs? Because some of these canals run north-south, some run east-west, some are 15 feet wide, some are 120 feet wide. How many different designs do we need to do? And then, how many of the canals can we cover? What will be the acceptance by other irrigation districts and by other agencies? Will they view it as something that's beneficial or something that's an extra cost that's not really part of what they traditionally like to do? So I see more on co-benefits than on costs. And one thing that we have to do is evaluate and see how we can monetize some of the co-benefits. Meaning, if you're shading the canal, you're not going to have the aquatic weed growth and algae growth in there, meaning you don't have to go in and clean it out as often. Well, can we get by with having to go once a year or no times a year, or what's that going to result in? So is there going to be some savings to the canal operator, labor cost savings and equipment cost savings? They don't have to do the clean outs there.
Yeah,
and then we want to try to do this to excite the public about solar energy. and building solar energy over existing infrastructure rather than taking unused rather than taking land that could be used either for cropland or its biodiversity value and so forth.
I definitely, yeah, because that was my next question. Is like, how are you going to get other? And the Turlock signed up for it, but how are you going to get other municipalities to join on? And I like the co-benefit thing. Like, but what is their incentive? And their incentive could be cost savings. But I'm assuming, I feel like that is going to be an uphill battle. Turlock is a very interesting place, a good place to start, especially that they have access to the grid is based off of these canals, and it'll be a super solution. You just hook it up and diffuse into the grid. But I'm assuming that is a pretty unique scenario, and that most of these most of the canal counties aren't like that, I would assume.
Well, yeah, we actually don't know how many, but I think there's enough to keep us busy for a while, where there's a good synergy there. One of Turlock's key motivations, again, was not having to buy land because they wanted to put in solar. They do want to put in more solar, but they don't own any more land.
Yep.
So they said, "Hey, let's just use the land we have."
Yeah, I'm excited for this to go down. I want to see how it works. I can't wait to see the papers that come from this, because this could be a very viable solution to a large problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'd love to get an installation. Some of the canals cross the interstate freeway, Highway 5 and Highway 99, the big north-south highways that run from, Highway 5 runs the length of California. If we could have those as rest stops where people would stop and charge their electric vehicles and so forth, and if it could fit into the whole electric vehicle system, because there are many places where canals are near highways and freeways and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
So there's just so many possibilities there. And I think that's what could help capture the imagination of the public, because, California is committed to converting its transportation from fossil fuels to electricity. And we're looking at, I'm also encouraged because there's now a proposition that I guess will be delayed till next year, Prop 30, to put real money into these electrification efforts, into building the infrastructure for electric vehicles, into subsidies for electric vehicles, and also to help reduce forest fire emissions. Yeah.